What if I asked each one of you in here today a simple question? Are you aware how perspective decides who you are right now and who you can become? 10 years ago, I joined an organization called Entrepreneurs Organization, which gathers together entrepreneurs from around the world. What significance had that to me? It was the first day of my life where I found out that I was not just the only one. Because up until that point, I felt I was very different. My journey with Entrepreneurs Organization, and so what it does is they gather, there's 17,000 of us in this organization, but you're gathered into little groups of 6 or 7 called forums, and they meet once a month. And one of these forum meetings, something happened that changed my perspective of myself and ultimately went on to change my life. And so I just want to tell you a little story about that. So I was given a task as my forum leader at the time to ask a question to my forum mates. And that went something like this. So I sat them around in a semicircle, and the question was, it's 11:30 p.m. in your home. The house is silent. Everybody's asleep except you. You're sitting on the couch, and you don't want to go to bed. There's something kicking around in your mind. It's welling up emotions. You don't know where it's come from, but you just know you're not going to sleep tonight. So I asked them all to write down a little card the 3 things that made that happen to them the most. And so they all beavered away, and I beavered away too. I wrote it down, but I wasn't focused on me. So when I wrote my 3 down, I put it in my pocket and thought nothing more of it. My focus was entirely on the other 6. And when they had all written down their 3 things, the next part of the task was to look at the 3 and figure out or feel which one was the strongest, which resonated with them the strongest. And so that went over okay, and they all start to share. And the thing that came out of the sharing for me was every one of them was different. The thing that was keeping them awake for every person was different. It was tied to something that happened in their past. But that's not the story, because the story really started the next morning. Because the next morning when I got up, I went to change my jeans. And in doing that, I found the card that I had written the day before, which I just ignored. And something on that card started to burn into me. And I mean, I started to feel it. And I started to go, why did I write that? Where did that come from? Surely it can't be right. Because what I'd written on that card was, and one of the things was that I had no self-worth. And I remember where I was. I was standing in my bedroom at the window, and this hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, how can this be? And to kind of explain why that came to me, I kind of have to take you back to my life growing up. So I grew up in a really rural part of Ireland. It's idyllic, it's innocent, it's unspoiled. I grew up the eldest of 4 to a father who loved to work and a mom who was a dreamer. And my mom used to tell stories about castles in the sky and was always dreaming. But my parents, before I was born, decided that they wanted to build a house without a mortgage. And so that was kind of unusual at the time, but that decision-making took them to a place where that meant we lived in a caravan, a trailer. And so that meant we were the poor family. Now, even though we were only in it for 5 years, and even though at the end of that, we would own our own home. For us, we were still labeled the trailer kids, the kids that had no money. And everyone in this room has been given something else by their parents that probably sometimes we don't realize that has been given to us, and that's our name. And so my parents, in their great wisdom, decided to call me Troy. Now, everybody in Ireland's a John or a Patrick. My dad still cannot tell me where Troy comes from. He jokes that it was a horse he saw in the Grand National. But I don't know if that's true. But Troy Armour was an unusual name. And the minute I went to school, it was like I was different. I wasn't John, I wasn't Patrick. And even teachers would say, where'd you get that name? What does it mean? I didn't know what it meant, but it just marked me as different. As well at school, I wasn't aggressive. So I was never throwing punches and I was never in trouble. I wasn't good at sports. I was more interested in painting and creating. I was sewing and knitting. And so at that time in Ireland, that meant I was gay. That meant I was a girl. That's just the way people saw it. So my whole perspective of myself was built through other people's eyes. I started to believe I'm weird, I'm different, I don't fit in, I'm gay. Like, there's no internet. Kids don't know how good they have it now. You can search the answers to all these things, but at that time you're going, what does it even mean? Happy? I don't know. So what all that did was, during that time, was write a tape in my head of those things. Our inner voice. My inner voice constantly told me a repeat of everything that other people told me. And there's people in this room that have that same inner voice. My inner voice was built by other people, as it is with many other people. And so what does that mean? That means that anytime something will go wrong in my life, I would say to myself, that's you again. Everybody said it wouldn't work out for you. You would fail. You'll never be anything. And, you know, we have our fathers, our mothers, our friends, we have partners, and they don't realize sometimes little simple comments can hit, and they get written to the tape. And so that tape plays over and over and over again in our heads. So how did that change? Well, that day on that page, when I saw I had no self-worth, something in me said, okay, I need to do something about that. At 17, I didn't go to college. I had enough of school. I just felt, you know what, I'm going to be different no matter where I go. And so I went out and became the one job that you can do on your own. I was an entrepreneur. And so over a period of 25 years, I built 3 companies. And what did those 3 companies do for me? They built a different perspective for other people to see. So I put all the success out like a moat around me. So people would see sports car, big house, business. Okay, so they wouldn't see what was in the middle, because what was in the middle wasn't worth anything. They would see all the trappings of success. But that was fake. So I want to take you through just some of the experiences I had which changed my perspective of me and the power that has given me. Because 3 years ago, I wouldn't have stood on the stage and spoke, because I didn't stand in front of people to speak. So this is part of that solution. So the first was, I applied 30 years later to go to college. And to my surprise, I got accepted into MIT, and I headed off to do this program in leadership. And I sat at the very back of the room. Congrats to all the people in the back of the room. I was shy. I didn't want to speak. And I sat there and went, like, there's 67 other entrepreneurs in here. They're doing incredible things. They're changing the world. They're making so much money. Like, I don't belong. This turns up as imposter syndrome. People have so many different names for this tape that plays in your head. How can I belong here? So I didn't know what was coming the second night. But the second night, they have this exercise called the Night of the Living Dead. And it's like a horror movie, because it is a horror movie. And so it's like an FBI interrogation. They sit you in front of the class. I did not know this was coming. And they put a lamp in your face. And this guy sits with a mic. And so the 4th business I'm on now is really about impacting young people. It's a sport that I invented. And so this is what I brought to MIT. And so the guy sits in front of me with this mic, and he said, why Junk Kouture? And so I start to say, I love creativity and I love fashion and combining them together and all these things. You know, it's so empowering for people. And he just said, why? I said, you know, fashion and art and creativity with young people, and why? And he was just so stoic about it, right? And you're there, like, and I don't remember, but to me it was like 8 or 9 whys. And after 8 or 9 whys, like, there was a lot of profanity that not allowed to use today. But the thing is, I was there going, I've told you the answer. I've given you the answer. Like, what more do you want from me? Like, and at this point, tears are running down my eyes, right? They're running down my face. And because he was doing what he was there to do. And that was to chip away every excuse, every wall that I had built up around me to get to the real answer of why I was doing what I was doing. And the words that came out of my mouth, I didn't expect, because I didn't have the answer. But in that moment, the words that came out of my mouth were, because every one of those kids is me. And I remember him turning to me and saying, and now you know why you will not fail. Because this is driving you. You will go through that wall to make it happen. And when it does, the financial reward will come, but it's not about money. There's another thing driving you. And I remember when I left that room, like, and the tears are still running down my face. And it was like I started to realize the thing that I thought was my biggest weakness was my biggest strength. The thing that I was hiding all that time was actually driving me on. So that was moment number one. Moment number two was slightly different because moment number one, I didn't know what was going to happen. You just take a number and go up in line to the seat. Number two, I sorted out myself. And so we all scroll our social media. And so this pops up in my thing saying, a person you may know. And it said, this girl wrote this line, I like to help people overcome problems. And I don't know why, but I felt this idea, I need to talk to this girl. Her name is Orla. I need to talk to this girl, see if she can figure out, how do I overcome certain things? Because I'd done public speaking classes, but it wasn't the speaking was the problem. It was the getting up in front of people. So at this point, Junk Kouture at this stage is 12 or 13 years old. I didn't do any interviews. I didn't talk in front of people. I had a PR agency. They were constantly asking me, this TV channel wants to listen to you, wants to talk to you. And I just said, no. I hired other people to do that, to be my voice. So I went to, I want to actually just say this because it took so much courage for me to ring Orla. And to describe that moment, I drove into the middle of a forest an hour away from my home because it was like I wanted to be somewhere where I could be sure that nobody knew I was making this call. Right? It's so irrational to think, like, I'm home alone, I could just dial and say, I want to talk to you about something, but no. And I remember being in the car and looking around, the odd fox or a rabbit. I was like, I'm definitely alone, right? And the sweat was pouring on me. And I remember when I rang her up, the first line I said to her was, I love where I come from, but it doesn't love me. I've been spat out and kicked out, and I don't fit there. And when I go home to meet my parents, and even meet my parents, I never became my dad, and he worked at the land and things, and that was not for me, and I don't fit there, I don't fit. So she said to me, come down to my clinic, and so the next week, I did go down to this clinic. I took courage to go down to her, but for an hour and a half, we had an incredible chat. Now, I love to chat with the best of people, so to me, it was just a normal chat. There was nothing in this that, to me, stood out. But after that, she just said to me, there's a couch there now, will you go and lie down? And I was like, God, now I'm going to talk about the real serious stuff. And so I lie down on this couch, and she pulls over a little stool, and she says, I just want to give you a sentence to say. And when you say it, I want you to tell me where you feel it in your body. Now, I'm a logical 3D kind of a person. I'm lying on this couch, and I'm going, like, what do I say? Like, there's no words this woman's going to give me, and I'm going to feel them somewhere. It's just silliness. So I was like, right, open mind, let's go with it. And so she says, I just want you to say out loud, it's okay to be alone. So I'm like, no problem. So I just say, it's okay to be, I can't say the word, Jesus, my throat's on fire. And she said to me, I'm not surprised. You have felt alone all your life. You have felt like you don't fit. You feel like you're out there in the world and you're doing something that nobody understands. And there's a reason you're doing it, and nobody understands that reason but you. And so for 40 minutes, she said, it took 40 minutes. She said, I want just to stay here until you can say it's okay to be alone without any problems. And it did take 40 minutes. And I remember at the end, I can say it clearly now, but it changed my life. And this is the thing, if it didn't happen to me, I would say, this is impossible. This is impossible. Somebody can change your life with a sentence. But I remember the next day ringing my PR agent, and I said, I want to do some interviews. And she goes, are you feeling okay? And I was like, no, I want to do some interviews. And I did 3 interviews very quickly at a newspaper, a magazine, and a radio station. And I remember that radio interview. I remember I got 70 emails and phone calls from grown men after it saying, I was that kid. How can you go on and say that you were that kid that was beat up and you were the kid that didn't fit? And like, what kind of courage? And I was like, I didn't feel any courage in it at all. But it really then was this driver of my biggest weakness was my biggest strength. That this really was an important thing, the thing that I was burying away. So the third part of that, the third thing was then really the exercise about changing the voice in your head. And we all have that voice in our head. And it could be dad, it could be mom, it could be a partner, it could be a teacher. One of the ones that resonated with me a lot was Robbie Williams 15 years ago at the height of his fame. At the height of his fame, he signed one of the biggest record deals ever in the UK. It was $100 million. And he just played 3 nights at Networth, one of the 3 biggest concerts ever recorded still in the UK. And at that same time, he took time out to write a poem. And the poem was, "Hey, sir." And it was simple. "Hey, sir, remember me. I'm the man you said would never be." Because no matter how much success he had, there was still the teacher that he had when he was 15 talking in his ear saying, "You're going to be nothing." And that was still driving Robbie no matter what. He's no self-worth either. And it's crazy to think that a guy who just signed a $100 million deal and was getting celebrated everywhere was sitting in a room going, "But I'm nobody." Because no matter what you get, that was the same with me, no matter how much I made, it didn't fill the hole. So this 3rd episode happened in another entrepreneurs organization retreat. It's a simple one, and it was effective. But this lady, Patricia Conlon, who's become a life coach for me, took me one day into the middle of a room. And in that room, she said to me, "I want you to just close your eyes, and I want you to feel that you're in nature." So a happy place, a nice green field, a beach, a forest. And as I do that, I'm there again thinking, "Oh, now what is this about now? Here we go again, right, this stuff." And then she says, "I want you to imagine you're something in nature." And I was going, "Okay, this has gone mad now." And at the same time, when I'm thinking this, she's in the back of my head, and she's going, "Now, there's no wrong answer." And she says, "When I do this exercise, I imagine myself as a tree. I'm well-rooted in the ground, and my branches reach out and touch people." And so I'm standing in the middle of this room going, like, what am I going to answer to this? Like, what? And so this thing started to come to me. And the more it came to me, I was like, I can't say this out loud. I'm going to sound like an idiot, right? I can't. And she's like, "There's no wrong answer. There's no wrong answer." And I'm like, so eventually I got the courage to say, "I am the sun." That's what came to me. I felt like the sun. And she immediately went, "God, but isn't it so true? Like you're just a ball of energy, and you're like, you bring light every time you come into the room." And I said, "God, I didn't think of that before or that way." And so we spent some time. She got me to think of words that were positive around the sun. And in that day, we rewrote the tape in my head. And so the sentence that we wrote, I wrote it at the end of the day, was, "I am the sun. I'm strong, I'm confident, I'm bold. And whatever happens today, I've got it. I've got over many things before. I've got this." And so that, over the last 3 years, as I walk around in the morning, and you know the power of the sun when you feel it around Monaco, like you feel it on your skin. It's incredibly powerful. And that was the day that the tape started to change in my head, where I started to see that I am not the person who I thought I was. That was what I saw through other people's eyes. It was time for me to see myself through my own eyes. Now, one of the things I want to do today, and you're all tired and all right, is that I want us to do that exercise together. So I want people just to stand up for a few minutes. Please, come on. And I want people just to close your eyes. There's no wrong answer, as Patricia said. There is no wrong answer. Close your eyes, and I want you to imagine yourself in a green field, a forest, whatever is your happy place in nature. And then when you get there, I want you to imagine yourself as something in nature. Just let it settle on you, right? Doesn't matter. It could be a Labrador, bubbly and loyal. It could be the tree. It could be a dolphin, loves swimming in the sea. And when you come up with that, I want you then to think of 3 words of positivity around that thing, whatever it may be. Now you can open your eyes and take your seats again. And so my challenge for everyone today is simple. If the voice in your head is a negative one, if your best friend is yourself and it's actually your worst friend, like it was with me, and if when you're under stress, that voice turns up, write a new sentence for you. Write the sentence that involves the 3 words of who you are in nature. Write that sentence and repeat it to yourself, because the power of perspective will change your life if you change it. That is your power.